David Locke's weekly interview is brought to you by Murdoch Auto Team. David Locke, good morning and welcome to the show.
Well, there's no better way than I can think of to start my Friday in Los Angeles than being with DJ and PK.
I bet you can think of a couple of ways.
Well, probably there's a few things. But
hey, guys.
Generally, I enjoy DJ and PK.
We enjoy having you on because you enlighten us on what is happening with the Utah Jazz in the NBA. And obviously, all of our listeners have read and heard a lot of speculation about will the Jazz move Markkanen? And the one thing we all know for sure is, well, if they do, Danny Ainge is going to back up the truck and he's going to come back with players and picks. And it's got to look something like the Donovan Mitchell trade and the Rudy Gobert trade. Beyond that, do you have any idea where this is going? Of all the rumors you hear, do you think that's more likely? This is less likely? What do you think?
I think, Danny, I think you're correct. Danny's track record is pretty clear, right? And I think what's actually most clear about it is we'll think about the Jason Tatum, Markelle Fultz trade or the Donovan trade or the Rudy trade. But there's also, remember, this whole span of time where he's unwilling to trade those picks. Remember? Like, he won't trade for Jimmy Butler, and he doesn't trade for Paul George. So he's been very consistent in his career of having a price for something, believing that is the price, and then holding to that. Like, that's his signature. It's not that he's just always making deals, because he was really heavily criticized in Boston for having not made some, not pulled the trigger on some deals to get players, which turned out to be the Tatum and Brown picks, which he has now proven to be correct. He seems to be proven to be correct on most of these. I think we're in a similar situation. There is, the Jazz, I think the feeling, at least if you listen to most national commentators, and this might be accurate, I think the Jazz feel like that they probably can't have the same season that they had each of the last 2 years, where, you're 18 and 21 or 21 and 18, and then you pull the ripcord. And I think there's a little feeling of that's not a great spot to be. And from at least the commentators, I don't know if the Jazz feel that way. And so it's interesting to me of whether or not we can do that again. And if in any way that forces the Jazz hand, that they've gone big game hunting, as we say a few times, and haven't gotten Porzingis and Holiday and Bridges and free agency, and that therefore they just feel as though we're still 2 or 3 players away. And then that in turn means that the timeline's been backed up. And so there is a need to clear the deck so that, you have all your players on the timeline. I'm not a timeline believer, so I don't know if I believe that, but there is that argument.
Let me throw this at you and see what you think. That they've had discussions.
Hey, PK, how often does DJ bring up the fact that he's the one that asked the question that got the big game hunting, and then the real key answer about that the reason we don't empty the deck is because we want to be ready to run, and then the even more key answer that if we get to July without having got it, maybe we'll pivot. Like, how often does DJ bring up that he asked this question?
Actually, that press conference, he and I, we went over We went over questions to be asked. I think we did that on the air, if I remember correctly, DJ. We talked about questions to ask, and so when he asked those questions, we'd already discussed what questions needed to be asked. So I wasn't surprised at all, because we literally talked about that stuff, about what questions to ask, and they were like, the both of us just said, yeah, this and this and this needs to be asked. He was the one that asked them. So, he doesn't really brag on himself a lot.
I just thought check. I do think it's one of the most. Sorry, I do want to hear what you had to say, PK. Sorry. I do think it's one of the great press conference answers because it's incredibly revealing in the three areas to what, like when I hear people say there's no plan. No, Danny actually gave you the entire plan in one answer to a question. Like, we're going big game hunting. The reason we haven't emptied the coffers and just been terrible is because we want to be able to go get a player or two and be ready to go and not have to wait 3 more years, which I thought was really fascinating. And by the way, if we can't go big game hunting, then maybe we have to pivot at some point in time. And if we have to pivot, the only piece that's unclear is if we're pivoting, are we still staying in a situation where if we can go big game hunting, we're only one or two players away, or are we really going to the bottom?
Right. I gotcha.
All right. Sorry. I wanted to give DJ a little love.
Yeah, we talked.
I could feel his vibe that maybe he needed a little boost today.
Okay. To me, with this Markkanen stuff, is they've had discussions with, let's just say, 3-4 teams, and we know about the teams, and the Jazz have said, here's the price. They've had discussions. I believe if you're going to go with the Warriors, I got to have Kuminga. I have to have him, and then that's the starting point. If you're not willing to include him, then we don't really have a discussion. You include everybody else in their dog, but I got to have him. And then you can go on to OKC and the Spurs and so forth. And so at this point, it's just a question of, all right, I've got my parameters for each of these teams. Here's what we want. And if it's going to happen, you call me back. And if it takes a week or 2 or 3, we know with Mitchell, it was right before the players start to get together in Salt Lake and get to work out informally in preparation for training camp. So if he gets a call from one of these teams, this is what we want. And if they say yes, then they call him. And, okay, then we can begin to negotiate a deal. But if not, that's where we're at. And that, I think, without any particular inside information, that this is where they're at with this. What's your response to that?
I think that's probably pretty deduced, pretty logically. That makes sense. So, I think when people are dealing with Danny, they know that 5 million, because they can probably then ask for one more thing at the end.
So I think, that makes total sense. Can we discuss Jonathan Kuminga for a second?
Please.
Go ahead.
So, I get it. Top 10 pick, 6'8", 225, total powerhouse.
So, can you look at the shooting for me for a second?
David, you're very muffled. We can't hear you.
Sorry, can you look at the shooting for me for a second? Basketball reference?
I think he takes 2 threes a game and makes. Am I better?
You're better now. You're better now.
Okay. I think he makes 2. I think he takes
As of 3 or 4, and makes him a 32%. And was not a good shooter in the G League when he started.
David, we're losing you again. You're going in and out.
Okay, let me switch.
Okay. Please switch. Please do. Technology. It's fantastic until it's not.
That's really weird. I'm literally walking back and forth on a block and been walking the same exact spot every single time, so I don't know why.
You pacing. Anyway. We're all stunned by that development.
I know. Well, thank you. I'm staying with the in-laws, and they're all still asleep, so I had to go out and get outside and walk around.
Yep.
I mean, for us, maybe we think Jonathan Kuminga is 22 years old, and if you're taking a shot at trying to find some really good players, I kind of get why we would want Jonathan Kuminga, kind of. I mean, I got to be honest, not like when PK says, I'd have to have Jonathan Kuminga, I'm like, I might actually have to have Moody or Porzingis, not Kuminga. I'm not actually convinced that Kuminga is the best of the 3 players. But I certainly wouldn't not go get Paul George for Jonathan Kuminga. Let me tell you. I'm lost on this. When did he become a star? And when did he actually become an NBA starter?
Is it about that, or is it about potential? It's not what they think he is today. It's what they think he could be in 3 years.
Okay. Let's just be all right. Let's be totally honest here for a second.
He might not be that in 3 years.
He's been in the league in 3. He's been in the league 3 year, right?
Yeah.
So if Taylor Hendricks, in his 3rd year of the NBA, shoots 2 threes a game and shoots 32%, how are you feeling about it?
Not good, because that would be a regression from what he's already doing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So just because you play for the Warriors doesn't mean you're good. I feel like there's a little bit of a market thing going on here. I always feel that a little bit with Knicks players too, and sometimes Lakers players. You're in these big markets and they get mentioned enough that everyone decides they're super good. Jonathan Kuminga is really talented. Don't misunderstand me. Top 10 pick. His body's amazing. His power, he's great. He is absolutely the script of players that don't make it in the NBA. They're overwhelming strength and power for when they're young. Suddenly they're playing guys as strong and they're not as good. But I'm super lost on why Jonathan Kuminga would be a player you wouldn't trade for Paul George, and why Jonathan Kuminga would be the player we have to get if we're trading Lauri Markkanen. If the Warriors were holding out and saying you can have Podziemski and Moody and you get 3 first-round picks and a pick swap, but you can't have Kuminga, I'd be like, oh, come on, I have to. Okay, good, we'll do it.
Well, once they say you can't have Kuminga, that raises my antenna. Why are they saying you can't have Kuminga?
I'm lost on it. I think he's a nice player, but not if the Warriors roll out Steph Curry, DeAnthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins, Lauri Markkanen, Draymond Green, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson, and some big, they're really good. They're really good.
More than 6th in the West?
Yeah, I think I put him in the top 4. Klay Thompson wasn't great last year. They're not replacing – he was a 4-7 a game, but so's Lowry. Lowry's the exact same. Lowry took more catch-and-shoot threes than Klay and hit them at a higher percentage last year. Lowry took the most catch-and-shoot threes of anyone in the NBA and is one of only 4 players in the NBA who took, I believe, 4 or more to make over 41%. And Steph Curry, Sam Hauser, and Malik Beasley are the others. Arguably, Lowry's top 5 shooter in the NBA. So you add Lowry, they get better at that because he always has his shooting window open. And there was garbage going on there at times last year.
If he's so good, why did Cleveland give him up?
They missed. And because they got Donovan. And Donovan's awesome. Donovan's super awesome. Maybe that's my point. Let's make sure that we actually give the that are super awesome all the credit in the world, and let's not make guys into being awesome that aren't.
Right, but when Markkanen was in Cleveland, he wasn't super awesome.
Yeah, well, Chicago really mishandled him. He was actually pretty fantastic in Cleveland if you go back and look at the last 6 weeks when guys got hurt and he got some opportunity. And he's been amazing for us. He's great. That's the thing. Lowry's great.
I'm intrigued by what Ainge is thinking, because the reason that we went over the questions both on the air and off before that press conference is because Ainge speaks so rarely. And there are so many Jazz fans, and he holds all their hopes and dreams in his hands. And he doesn't talk much. I'm curious if they're ever going to make a deal with the Warriors, because I just don't know that the Warriors have enough. And maybe you can, and maybe there's some three-way deal to be made with the Warriors and Spurs, and so maybe there's something there. But I just wonder if they're in the poker game to raise the price of poker for Oklahoma City, because we know who really has the goods. We know who's got a roster full of young players that either are very good or look like they're about to be very good, and they've also still got a ton of draft picks. So if you're looking to get the most, they've got the most. So really, I wonder if the Warrior thing is a Trojan horse here.
You sign Lowry with the extension. You know he's going to be still available for the next period of time, and you've already established what the market price is. It's an interesting thought. I certainly am pro signing Lauri to the extension because I like watching Lauri, but it has nothing to do with team building.
If you remember the question in the press conference about Lauri Markkanen was met by a guy who'd been previously very expansive, was met with a big old no comment, not getting into that, not my favorite topic, thanks, no thanks, and next question.
Right.
He did not want to go down that road. There were too many options, and he didn't want to be accused of lying later, and he didn't want to tip his hand. It's just easier to, no, we're not talking about that.
Right. No, it's a good point. I don't know if they would do it, but do you think Oklahoma City would send us Jalen Williams for Lauri Markkanen?
Yes.
I'd be super interested.
And do you think Ainge is asking for draft picks too?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Oklahoma City. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think Jalen Williams is just as good as Lauri Markkanen at this point.
Ooh.
And he can handle. Oklahoma City has a little lack of ball handling, so I think that's a hard trade for them. But I'll take the Williams brothers as our core for the future.
The Williams brothers, listening to those guys talk, the rookies. I think all three of them were asked basically, what do you expect in the summer league here where they start in Salt Lake and then go down to Vegas? And I think all three of them said, I don't know. I'm paraphrasing and I'm doing a rough interpretation. But I thought that was a good answer by all three of them. I don't know. We'll see. I'll do what they say they want me to do and go from there. Is that a good representation of what their attitude should be and their mindset?
I thought all three of them were fabulous. Either they all have good agents, good parents, good upbringings. Derek Arduino got to them fast. I don't know what, but I thought Cody Williams talked about playing hard, which has been the one real criticism, if you talk to scouts about him, is whether he understands how hard to play. Isaiah Collier talked about passing and winning. I thought it was really interesting. I asked Isaiah Collier, how do you evaluate your year at USC, which was his chance to basically give every excuse or explanation, I don't mean it negatively, about what the environment was and why he didn't get to thrive. And his answer was, we should have won more. I thought that was pretty great. And I thought the idea that Filipowski has struggled in interviews is not possible. He was great. So I thought all three of them really answered questions and had been taught or understood themselves of what was important and what mattered. And I think you're right. They have no idea what's coming in Summer League, and they have no idea what's coming in the NBA. And I don't expect, I always got to find a way to change my answer on this. I always say, I don't expect much from them next year. That's not because I don't expect much from them. It's because I have such an unbelievable respect for the 300 guys that play regularly in this league. And there's just no chance those guys are ready for that. There's the 300 players that play every night in this league are so unbelievably great. And this league is so impossible. And it's a little bit of where we started. The separation between those players that might be good or actually are great is super big to me. And, I'm excited to watch Cody and Isaiah and Kyle. I wouldn't I think they're going to be able to do this or that. Okay. Well, we'll wait and see because I think the league's really, really hard, and they're going to have some developing to do. It's going to take some time. I think they all have a chance to be really good.
We have all heard that the 23 draft was going to be great, the 24 draft wasn't as good, and the 25 draft was supposed to be great. I just read the 26 draft is supposed to be great. I don't have any idea if that's true or not. Have you heard or read or been told or believe is the 26 draft loaded? Because that goes to the question of how far down are the Jazz willing to go and how long are they willing to stay down? A couple of loaded drafts might encourage you that the short-term pain is worth the long-term gain.
Yeah, I've heard 20. Now, yes, read the same things you have. I don't have any idea. I haven't seen any players. But, yeah, that is the new murmur, right, is that 2026 is just as good as 2025. I get really nervous on these things because kind of one of the obviously Victor Wembanyama, two things. The Victor Wembanyama draft was supposed to be great last year. That was supposed to be the most amazing draft. Okay, Victor's great. There's a real chance Scoot's not. Amon, Asur are both amazing athletes who can't shoot, so we'll see how that plays out. And that next group of kids, Jerice Walker, Anthony Black, some of those others, still a long way to go. Now, go back to what I just said a moment ago that, rookies are hard. So, let's give them some time and give them some leeway. The other one I go back to is the Dante Exum draft. That was supposed to be the most amazing draft ever. If I remember correctly, it was Andrew Wiggins, Jabari Parker, Joel Embiid, Aaron Gordon, and Dante Exum and Marcus Smart were the top 6 picks, and Nick Stauskas was 7. Really? That was the draft that we were all tanking for? And that was supposed to be a marquee draft. And you got Andrew Wiggins, who's a nice rotation player, not an all-star, nice starter. Jabari Parker, who didn't pan out. Joel Embiid, who's a superstar. Aaron Gordon, who's a nice starter. And Dante Exum, who didn't pan out, or is a rotation player at this point in his career. Okay, that's kind of what drafts are. So I'm a little hesitant on this idea that there's this monster draft coming and that you would build your whole life around it. Plus, the lottery odds make it really hard to live that way. Ask Detroit.
Well, we can, because now we know somebody in Detroit. I can literally ask him. Dennis Lindsay looked good on TV.
Yes,
there he was.
Yes.
Sitting there watching.
I got it.
All right, David. Well, we'll let you continue to pace the neighborhood and enjoy the time off with family, and we will talk to you again.
Will I be lucky enough to see either of you at Summer League?
Yeah, if you're back, sure.
Not me. I'll be in Vegas.
Big 12 media days overlapping.
Yeah.
And that's too bad.
That 2014 draft had Nikola Jokic, so it was an incredible killer draft.
Right.
And nobody knew it.
Right. That goes to the Giannis Rudy draft, right? The top side of the – I think there's 2 other examples of this. There's the Giannis Rudy draft, we all know, and I think if you look back at the front side of that draft, it wasn't very good. And there's the Klay Thompson Kawhi Leonard draft, which is Alec Burks.
Yep.
Yeah.
That draft was great, too.
Was that Ennis also?
Yeah.
That one of those, Tristan Thompson and Ennis Cantor at the top of your draft. Ooh, wow, pretty exciting. Oops, Jonas Valanciunas. Ooh.
If you take,
long NBA careers, but
yeah,
and lots of TV appearances.
Ennis and Alex is one thing. Clay and Kawhi would have been another.
Yeah, right. So I think it's really hard to sit here and say that. Dan's got a pretty good track record, and Justin has a pretty good track record of drafting the right guy most of the time. So, I guess if you're in the position to draft, hey, there's a real argument that things haven't broken as they hoped, and you actually have to take a step back and go to 05 and 06 and hold that pick for both those years, and then I think it becomes second-round picks, and by that time you hope Keontae's is ready to go, and if not, you make adjustments and you go. But it's hard, man. It's super hard. I'm sitting here in L.A. The Lakers and Clippers are both in kind of a disaster. They got literally someone said to me last night, with all the money in the world, why can't Steve Ballmer do this better? Well, because it's really hard, right? It's really hard. But they're the Clippers. The Clippers are in a mess. They have no picks, and if healthy, they're the 8th best team in the West right now. And the Lakers, I don't know. What are they? 6th best team in the West? And they just basically decided to redo the Kobe Bryant farewell tour with LeBron?
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they did that, they missed the playoffs 6 years in a row. So, there was a torn Achilles in there, too. So, but stuff goes wrong. Stuff goes wrong.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if a superhuman robo-man, LeBron, is ever going to have a problem, it's going to be now.
David, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, see you guys.
David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Join us right here on The Zone. All right. Well, he left us plenty to talk about. We will get to that next. DJ and PK, it's 97.5, The Zone.